introduce you, Caroline Carter, and her concentration is clinical, and today she'll be talking about ginseng in sports nutrition, mitigating muscle damage and enhancing athletic performance. Caroline.
All right, good afternoon. So as Dr. K said, we're going to be talking about ginseng in sports nutrition and how it mitigates muscle damage and enhances athletic performance. This does not work. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about ginseng and exercise as a whole. So ginseng is comprised of these small particles called ginsenides. So ginsenides contain anti-inflammatory and antioxidant properties. So, and then these properties can modulate cortisol levels, lactate levels, creatine kinase levels, amongst a plethora of other different things within the body. And exercise is something that we have to do to stay healthy and to have a healthy body and to maintain an overall wellness. And it helps with our strength, it helps with our overall health, it does a lot of things that we really need. So as a result of exercise though, at a cellular level, we see micro damage to the muscles. So we, as a result, see these biomarkers of damage, which are typically what's seen as creatine kinase or interleukin-6. So that's just usually observed in the body after something like exercise or some other form of muscle damage that occurs. So, and these aren't necessarily very good things. These are bad things. So as you can see, ginseng has the ability to lower cortisol levels, lower creatine kinase levels, lower lactate levels. It provides us our antioxidants and our anti-inflammatory properties. And exercise increases those things. So it increases our cortisol, it increases our lactate, and increases our creatine kinase. It releases oxidants, and it causes soreness and fatigue. So when we combine these two things together, we can see that ginseng is able to attenuate the side effects of exercise. So we see less sore muscles, less fatigue in our muscles. It prevents us from injury from overuse and unsafe practices due to the side effects of exercise. It lessens our rating of perceived exertion, so how we feel when we're exercising. And it also makes us feel more energized and helps with muscular excitation as well during our exercise. So there was 12 studies that were chosen, and the outcomes of these studies were reviewed. And these studies focused on how ginseng affects the body, specifically the musculoskeletal system, during and after exercise. So some other factors that were observed from these studies were, like I said, muscular excitation, RPE, muscle regeneration, and muscular inflammation, amongst a plethora of other factors as well. So learning about ginseng can provide some easier and safer methods for us, especially high-performing athletes who put their bodies through a lot of stress via exercise. So the study methodology, so there was various scientific databases that were screened, essentially screening for ginseng in exercise, ginseng in sports, and 12 of these studies were chosen. All of these studies were performed on healthy individuals. A couple of them were performed on athletic individuals with various different strains of ginseng and performance of exercise during these studies. So here we can see kind of the method that was chosen for finding our studies and using them. Okay, so we're going to first talk about neuromuscular fatigue. So neuromuscular fatigue is typically caused by lactate in the blood. So when we're exercising and we start to feel tired and sore, this is because of the presence of lactate in our blood. So as we talked about earlier, ginseng can attenuate this. So some of the studies that observed attenuation was Korean ginseng, red ginseng, and Jilin ginseng. It was noticed that in the levels from the blood tests that were taken, that there was less lactate that was allowed to be in the body while and after exercise. So this allows for us to be a little bit more energized, less fatigue, and less likely to hurt ourselves because of that exhaustion that's present in the body, and just makes it more pleasurable as a result as well. We're going to talk about muscle damage or catabolism. So the studies that we saw attenuation in. We saw the American ginseng, red ginseng, ginseng, and Korean ginseng. So muscular damage, as we talked about earlier, it's observed in the blood that we see cellular biomarkers like interleukin-6 and creatine kinase, which essentially are byproducts of muscle damage. So it lowers and attenuates these levels as a result, and it decreases that damage that the muscles go through from exercise, which can allow for like a quicker recovery, a quicker bounce back, and it's safer as a result as well. Rating of perceived exertion. So the two studies that it was observed under, the two strains, were the Panax and Korean ginseng. So there's no real, because it is perceived exertion, there's no real factor of testing that. So it can be chalked up to, we studied muscular excitation, and there was decreased blood lactate levels. So some of these things can be contributed to or contribute to that lowered rating of perceived exertion, so making it feel like they've done less and they're hurting less as well. So, but there's no real way to measure this aside from how that person feels, so we can kind of connect it in that way. In the one other study for the Panax, I believe, in both of the high dose and low dose groups, it was noticed that rating of perceived exertion was attenuated, and in this case, in this specific study, rating of perceived exertion was the only method of study or method of observation that was used as well. So for our dosage, so 10 of the 12 studies that we used, they used above 960 milligrams. So essentially anywhere from 960 to a gram or higher. It really depends, it varied for all of them. So 10 of them did that. So one of them though, however, used 700 milligrams, and this is one of the ones that we didn't really see an outcome with. So it can be possibly contribute to the fact that there was less that was used in the study when the majority of the others used more. We're not really sure, but in most, that's what it's looking like. However, there was another that used 5 milligrams of RG1. However, RG1 is not a type of ginseng, but is the main component of ginseng. So it's more of a potent form of it. And there was only 5 milligrams used, but there was observed muscular regeneration. And then the one outlier with that as well, the other outlier, is the Panax natto ginseng trial. And they did 1 gram per day, and there was no real observed differences with that one either. So I wanted to go back and talk about the RG1 trial again, because like I said, it seemed the most successful. So we observed that with the use of 5 milligrams, which is not a lot, of the RG1, the main component of ginseng, for 1 day, a trial for 1 day. This was also the only one that used biopsies of the muscles. And we noticed in that 1 day that there was increased replenishment of satellite cells, which means that the cells at that level were replenishing themselves faster, meaning that healing was occurring faster. And it also attenuated glutathione, and glutathione essentially is what contributes to having energy during exercise. So it's quite important and can provide a lot. So like I said earlier, these were the 2 that we didn't really observe a lot of outcomes with. There wasn't much to see. So the wild ginseng extract, blood test, physical test, all that jazz, nothing was really observed. And same thing for the Panax natto ginseng, RPE and blood tests were taken and nothing was really seen. So the only 2, as we can see, are the wild ginseng extract and the Panax natto. There was no outcomes, but everything else was successful. So 10 of the 12 trials were successful in showing that ginseng does attenuate a lot of these factors. So in conclusion, we can see that there's a lot of data that provides us with ginseng, seeing that ginseng does in fact help with healing us and providing that excitation and all of the factors that we've talked about during and after exercise. So, but however, there wasn't a lot of cohesivity in these trials. So we don't have dosage size, we don't have strain, but focusing on the timing, the strain, and the dosage size would allow us to be able to broaden our horizons with what could possibly be very beneficial for the world of athletic training, specifically for higher performing athletes. References. Is there any questions? Mhm.
I'm personally a pickleball player, so I play a lot. My two things for recovery is green tea, and I take some creatine supplements. What would you say ginseng would do for me or help? Why did you choose ginseng?
Well, it's been used for a very, very, very long time, especially in ancient Chinese medicine, for antioxidant and healing properties. So having this study and showing that there is actual proof that it helps with muscle soreness, meaning that you're not going to be as sore during and after. It helps with muscular fatigue, so you're not more likely to result and rely on muscles that you don't need to be using because you're tired. So those accessory muscles, when we're doing that bench press and we start to move our arms because it's easier, we don't want that because that's a result of neuromuscular fatigue. It helps with us bouncing back quicker, with healing as well. So, and since there is no specific type that was observed, we can just see as a result that ginseng does have properties. We're still unsure of how much, what time, what kind, and everything, but there is actual beneficial proof because a lot of these companies do say, oh yes, well this does this, this does this. We do have proof from blood tests and from biopsies and a plethora of other types of tests that were done in these studies that show that yes, it does have a result in helping make it safer, efficient, and easier to exercise.
But we're still unsure on the numbers.
Any other questions?
So just curious as to why you wanted to study this, because it's very interesting results and it's very applicable to today, but why did you want to study this in particular?
So I didn't necessarily have a calling towards it, but I thought it was very interesting to see because there are a lot of days, I personally believe that supplementation has been very skewed in today's world where everyone's like, take this, take this, take this, it does X, Y, and Z, and in reality it might, or it does hardly anything. So learning about something that actually does work as a result, especially because I've heard of ginseng before, and not very common, but it was interesting. I read it off the list and I just thought it was fascinating to me and I wanted to learn more about it. So, any other questions?
All right, let's thank our speaker.